and my friend Viraj. We've got both Rebecca's and Lily. Okay. So let's start off with our fabulous agenda. We have a warm-up in the AP classroom. The first one's a little tricky. The second one is the same thing, but it sort of makes more sense. We are working on computer innovations and privacy. We're going to be working out of a Nearpod. I will put why don't I give you the code right now? Well, so what is due? It's our progress checks 3, 4, and 5. Right? That's your code, that's your video, and your written response need to be uploaded into the AP digital portfolio. I need to check them there so that you can then submit them. Just to go over, once again, when you are uploading things to the digital portfolio, you need to select the file and upload it. Then it's going to give you a yellow submit button. That one is okay to hit. That is getting your thing from being uploaded to actually being submitted into the digital portfolio. Okay, once you do that, a new yellow button should appear. This one says submit final. Do not hit that button until you are ready to submit to the AP. That is where that button sends it. Okay? All righty, one last thing. Oh, there's Richard. I wanted to show everyone, okay, in our module here. No problem. I'll go over this. Someone's asking about the 2 dates, okay? So right here in the module is something I want you to try and do. This is a link to the AP digital exam app. This is how you're going to take your AP exam at home. All right. When I open it, it says it's for Mac. I am assuming that it knows what my computer is and is sending me Mac because I'm on a Mac. Let me know if it's not sending you the app you need. Okay. There is a way to test the app. We'll try that next class. If you need information on your AP exams, here are the slides, okay? This is just a slideshow. I also have it as a video, which I am assuming most students would rather have. This is same thing, but a video. Okay? So it's just the slideshow in video format. Note that this is a WebM file, .webm. The only video I have received so far that did not work for the AP, somebody tried to record it on this WebM. WebMs are not MPEG-4s, and the AP cannot see them. Okay? So one thing, look, there's David. I did want to show you from the slides is this idea that if you wish to switch your AP test date from May 26th to June 7th or vice versa, please contact Mr. Poskvan. Right here is his email, okay? Christopher R. Poskvan. I tell you what I'm going to do. Copy address. This is Mr. Poskvan's email if you need it in the chat. Okay. Oh, look, there's Eric. Okay, let me put that back in case Eric needs it too. Welcome, Eric. I'm just saying, if you need to change your AP test to the 7th as opposed to the 26th, so that you have a little more time to study, that is perfectly fine. The only Problem is there's no backup date. So make sure that you get there. The idea is if you need to change something, you need to email Mr. Poskvan. His email is right here. I don't know what in the world. How did that come up? There we are. So here's his email. Okay. There's Olivia. Okay. The reason that you might want to switch your date is this idea that we had 2 days of test prep that we are now using for cybersecurity. The reason we are doing this is cybersecurity is on the AP test. So we need to get you this information. Okay. So that's what we're going to be working on today. All right. We're going to be doing a Nearpod. Oh, come on. Why do I not have my Nearpod? Oh, I know, because I had to shut down because the Nearpod was so grumpy last time. Okay. All right, here we are. So go to Nearpod. There we go. JW4E5. Okay, this just allows us to have some better collaboration boards. You'll see this is a fun unit. It's some interesting tips and tricks. All right, is everyone in their Nearpod? Anybody have problems? You can always just look at the slides if you want, but it's easier in the Nearpod to do the collaboration boards. Okay? Oh, actually, we're not going to do this. We haven't done our warm-up. So we have a warm-up. We're doing the innovations. Our objective is that you will be able to understand what computing innovations are and how cybersecurity concerns can affect them. All right, let me go to my fabulous AP classroom. I'm sorry, I had to shut down after last one. It wouldn't let go of me. I want to show you one more thing while we're in here. If I just go to my straight AP classroom, this is what it looks like. Look under review, okay? You have been assigned these 4 videos. Create PT response examples and scoring for 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3D. You have a video explaining how to do your written responses for each section, 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3D. If you are having trouble or are nervous, please look at these. They are supposed to be great resources, okay? Now, let's go to our fabulous warm-up. There we are, 5:10. Ooh, cool. That's exciting. Okay, Eric, we're just going to be going over this. The lecture will be posted on the YouTube link. You know, just so that everyone knows, I'm always worried. I swear I've posted this and given it out. Oh, I bet I don't even have it up. Yes, I do. Right here, this is a link to our YouTube playlist. Every day I post, oops, did that go out? No. Why did that not go out? Oh, there you go, okay. Every day I post our lecture to this YouTube playlist. So if you have to miss class or something, you can always look back at it, all right? All righty, let's get into our warm-up. Which of the following code segments can be used to interchange the values of the variables num1 and num2? By interchange, it means that the value of num2 is going to end up in num1 and the value of num1 is going to end up in num2. Is it A, num1 gets num2, num2 gets num1? Is it B, temp gets num1, num1 gets temp, num2 gets num1? C, temp gets num1, num2 gets num1, num1 gets temp? Or D, temp gets num1, num1 gets num2, num2 gets temp? These are a little tricky. They're not the easiest to understand. The idea is you can't destroy num1 or num2 in this process. You have to preserve them. So I have one answer, and it's a right answer. Oh, there they come. D, D, is it D and D? Great job, team. Everyone is 100% correct. D is the right one. Num goes into a temp variable. Num1 goes into a temp variable. So we have num1. Then num1 gets num2. So we've gotten num2 into num1. Then num2 gets the temp. If we did any of these others, we end up destroying num1, I believe. Right? So when num1 gets num2, if num2 gets num1, it's getting num2 again. Okay? This next one is very similar, but I find it makes more sense to me. A programmer completes the user manual of a video game she has developed and realizes she has reversed the roles of the goats and the sheep throughout the text. So there's a fabulous thing called find and replace. Consider the programmer's goal of changing all occurrences of goats to sheep and all occurrences of sheep to goats. The programmer will use the fact that the word foxes does not appear anywhere in the original text. Which of the following algorithms can be used to accomplish the programmer's goal? Isn't it nice to know that just these sentences are an algorithm? Excuse me. A, first change all occurrences of goats to sheep, then change all occurrences of sheep to goats. B, first change all occurrences of goats to sheep, then change all occurrences of sheep to goats, last change all occurrences of foxes to sheep. C, first change all occurrences of goats to foxes, then change all occurrences of sheep to goats, then last change all occurrences of foxes to sheep. Or D, first change all occurrences of goats to foxes, then change all occurrences of foxes to sheep, last change all occurrences of sheep to goats. All right, I have an answer. Anybody else? This should actually be easier for you than the last one. Which one is it? Which one keeps everything straight? Nobody else is going to throw in? There we go. All right. Once again, I am very proud of my answerers because they have the right answer. And it's funny, both classes, everyone got these right. They are confusing, but they do make sense. And I find this one makes more sense to me about how you're trying not to destroy num1 in the process. C, first change all occurrences of goats to foxes, right? So we've gotten the goats out of our document. Then change all occurrence of sheeps to goat. We know that all that's left are sheep and they all are wrong. So they all go to goat. Last, change all occurrence of foxes, which has all our goats in it, to sheep. So that is perfect. Okay. All righty. Now we are going to go into our fabulous Nearpod. Is everybody here? JW4E5? Just for fun, making sure everyone is on board. That's our Nearpod code. I will be broadcasting. All right. You'll be able to understand what computing innovations are and how cybersecurity concerns can affect them. Computing innovation. Remember the second day of class? No, I'm sure you don't, but I'm going to remind you. We talked about and came up with technological innovations. Post yours on the next collaboration slide. Okay? So you are supposed to post here whatever you thought up on the second day of class. Do you have any recollection? No, you don't. But I am going to remind you, the greatest technological invention in my books, innovation that we came up with, was a fusion-powered snowboard, cold fusion-powered snowboard. I believe there were a couple other wild things. Those are the things we're thinking of. If you can't remember yours, just think one up. What would a technical innovation be? We're going to take about 2 minutes, maybe 3. We'll probably go to 150. So think up an innovation or whatever you said originally. I do love the cold fusion powered snowboard. Okay, so I don't think these are new technical innovations, but we've got the smart booking tool. The idea that you can book things and that it's giving you the latest information in real time. Tide Pods, the idea that detergent, fabric softener, oil cleaner, it's all in one. Lily's pursuing that ever passion, the flying car. Does anyone not want a flying car? I guess there are going to be real problems with it, but I'm pretty excited about a flying car. I always did like that James Bond where they like click the wing on. All right, anybody else? Come on, we need a couple more. We've got 1 minute. I've only got 3. What's a crazy technical innovation? Oh, I can tell you mine. This was when I was a kid. I wanted a computer that could write in pencil so it could do my papers for me. So I was going to feed it a list of my letters in pencil. And once it had that, I could just speak into it and it would write my papers in pencil because I had to write my papers in pencil. The hoverboard, holograms, more advanced calculator, AI. Come on now, these are not just your technical innovation. They're not what are innovations, but they're supposed to be yours. These are fine. All right, let's move on. We're going to have an idea here. Okay, we got a nice video to watch. A lot of video today.
I think 19th century was about the Industrial Revolution, about electricity, about disrupting the agricultural society and making it more advanced. The 20th century was about physics and engineering to do more things easier in our everyday life, from refrigerators to washing machines. And the 21st century is definitely the digital age. It's the internet.
Even if you want to become a race car driver or play baseball, or build a house, all of these things have been turned upside down by software.
The lettuce bot is a robot that can sense its environment every single hour. This lettuce bot is seeing 1.5 million plants, and it's taking individual action on those plants. We enable lettuce growers to have higher yields in their fields by helping make it cheaper, by helping produce food in a more sustainable way. And that wasn't previously possible without computer science and technology.
I have a really fun job where we build Polymore, which kind of combines all my favorite things, so programming as well as fashion and art and design and shopping. Half the products you use these days are software products that you play with on your phone. And so if you want to build something cool, you need to know programming, right? And there's so many things that you can do with computer science. So if you just work backwards from the cool thing that you want to build and figure out what that is, a lot of times computer programming is part of that, right? So you should learn the skill. It's really exciting right now. The technology that we're developing right now is going to be used by your doctor in the next decade. When you come into the office and you're sick, and the doctor is going to be like, all right, spit in this cup. And I will put it into this magic machine, which is the sequencer. And in an hour, I can tell you what you have or what's wrong with you. So if we're looking for a new virus, for example, we'll download a database of all the viruses that are known. And we'll search for, our sequence of interest against a whole database of all viruses. So you still need somebody to analyze the data. The computer is not smart enough yet.
Our software helps people save energy and thereby reduce their carbon emissions. To date, we've saved over 8 terawatt hours, which is the equivalent of about 1.1 million cars on the road.
When you're forecasting the wind, there's so many different parameters that go into it. It would be impossible for a human to sit down and do all those calculations. We need a computer model in order to forecast it.
I write software which scans images, looking for bad images that we know are illegal. I work very closely with organizations like the National Center for Missing Children. I know that the work that we've done has impacted the life of people. And I feel very strongly about it because there's a lot of social problems right now that could really leverage the use of technology. It's a lot about empowering the people who are there helping the world by giving them the tools to be able to do better. That's something that we can do right now, and the tools available are huge.
The merging of art and technology is getting more and more significant now because computers and software are such an integral part of our lives day to day. People are realizing that it can be quite creative to take this medium of computers and create incredible works of art.
In Finding Nemo, when Crush and Squirt and all the friends are flying through the East Australian Current, you're seeing images of water flowing by, you're seeing the colors on the back of the turtle, you're seeing the sides of the fish. All of those things are generated through math and computer programs that we write, that we then give to the artists, and they take that to create that final image and tweak it and make it look beautiful and look fun.
The crux of it is really about invention. It's about looking at the world and being dissatisfied with things and questioning everything.
I always felt like if I didn't learn how to program, it would be like not learning how to read. The future would just be closed to me.
If you're in the coding profession, there's so many things that you can do, and you can pretty much pick and choose the course you want to be in.
I think that you can start something in your college dorm room, and you can have a set of people who haven't built a big company before come together and build something that 1 billion people use as part of their daily lives is just crazy to think about, right? It's humbling and it's amazing.
Really, it's about the chance to reinvent things and then see it out there in the world and see people using it and having fun or having a better life because of something that wasn't there before that you put in the world.
Okay. I think what's interesting with Mark Zuckerberg is the idea that you could be Mark Zuckerberg. His ability to code, etc., were probably pretty good, but that was 20 years ago. If you had an idea for an app, that's all Facebook was. Facebook is an app. You can do it. All right, so here's our next one. Brainstorm a computing innovation you believe would be beneficial to a future school. Okay, so just think up, we're going to spend another 2-3 minutes here. Brainstorm a computing innovation you believe would be beneficial to a future school. Think about whether your computing innovation has a program in it. Ooh, yes, but can it do it in pencil, Summer? That was the real problem. How to get the handwriting program to do it in pencil. They wouldn't let us use pens. They didn't trust us. But see, even little minds can think up an app. I thought up that app. It would have been like 1970.
We're thinking about an app or like just an innovation in the computing sector.
There was no such thing as an app in 1970. I was like, man, I just want a computer that'll do this for me. That's all it was at that time. I knew I had a need. Okay, I've got 5% in my thing. I need to get, we need a few answers here. Oh, 10%. Good job, team. A course finder to help students find classes and courses in their school they may be interested in taking based off their grades, GPA, interests, and performance in their current classes. That you're trying to find something that's going to sort of predict what would be a good next choice. It seems pretty cool. I'm not sure if this already exists, but being able to take a picture of classwork and being able to edit the paper to limit paper use. In theory, Acrobat Pro should do that for you, although it can't you can't edit a photo. You'd have to convert the photo into a PDF, and I am not sure the formatting would be there. Like when you just use Acrobat Pro on a regular PDF. I know because I used to work for National Geographic, and we used to have to modify documents like visa request to China because you needed a letter from your sponsor within 2 weeks of the application, and our 2 weeks had expired. So you could go in Acrobat Pro into the PDF and just change the date. Don't tell anyone I told you that. But these are the things that, being able to edit a PDF, PDFs are not locked in stone. You can edit away on them. You just need a program that'll open them up. An algorithm that trades in the stock market by itself with over 90% profitability. Ooh, if we had that, that would be trouble. The idea that the market is very difficult to predict is a good thing. A note taker. While the teacher is talking, it takes and organizes the notes for you. Boy, do I need that. What I need are something that writes efficient, succinct notes. My problem is my tendency is to write everything down. Writing everything down is not taking notes. You need to be able to identify the important material and get that. All right, so these are all great ideas and we're up to 35%. Look, there's a fresh one. Algorithm that records and selects important information that the teacher says. How are we going to evaluate important?
Well, that would be the role of AI. That's kind of like the thing with AI would be able to recognize what is important and what is not important.
Technically, but can it? Here's a good video for that question.
As a software developer and technologist, I've worked on a number of civic technology projects over the years. Civic tech is sometimes referred to as tech for good, using technology to solve humanitarian problems. This is in 2010 in Uganda, working on a solution that allowed local populations to avoid government surveillance on their mobile phones for expressing dissent. That same technology was deployed later in North Africa for similar purposes to help activists stay connected when governments were deliberately shutting off connectivity as a means of population control. But over the years, as I have thought about these technologies and the things that I work on, a question kind of nags in the back of my mind, which is,
what if we're wrong about the virtues of technology, and if it sometimes actively hurts the communities that we're intending to help? The tech industry around the world tends to operate under similar assumptions that if we build great things, it will positively affect everyone. Eventually, these innovations will get out and find everyone. But that's not always the case. I like to call this blind championing of technology trickle-down techonomics, to borrow a phrase. We tend to think that if we design things for the select few, eventually those technologies will reach everyone. And that's not always the case. Technology and innovation behaves a lot like wealth and capital. They tend to consolidate in the hands of the few. And sometimes they find their way out into the hands of the many. And so most of you aren't tackling oppressive regimes on the weekends. So I wanted to think of a few examples that might be a little bit more relatable. In the world of wearables and smart phones and apps, there's a big movement to track people's personal health with applications that track the number of calories that you burn, or whether you're sitting enough, or sitting too much, or walking enough. These technologies they make patient intake in medical facilities much more efficient. And in turn, these medical facilities are starting to expect these types of efficiencies. As these digital tools find their way into medical rooms and they become digitally ready, what happens to the digitally invisible? What does the medical experience look like for someone who doesn't have the $400 phone or watch tracking their every movement? Do they now become a burden on the medical system? Is their experience changed? In the world of finance, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are revolutionizing the way we move money around the world. But the challenge with these technologies is the barrier to entry is incredibly high, right? You need access to the same phones, devices, connectivity. And even where you don't, where you can find a proxy agent, usually they require a certain amount of capital to participate. And so the question that I ask myself is, what happens to the last community using paper notes when the rest of the world moves to digital currency? Another example from my hometown in Philadelphia. I recently went to the public library there, and they're facing an existential crisis. Public funding is dwindling. They have to reduce their footprint to stay open and stay relevant. And so one of the ways they're kind of going about this is digitizing a number of the books and moving them to the cloud. This is great for most kids, right? You can check out books from home, you can research on the way to school, from school, but these are really two big assumptions: that one, you have access at home, and two, that you have access to a mobile phone. And in Philadelphia, many kids do not. So what does their education experience look like in the wake of a completely cloud-based library? What used to be considered such a basic part of education? How do they stay competitive? The final example from across the world in East Africa, there's been a huge movement to digitize land ownership rights. So for a number of reasons, migrant communities, older generations dying off, and ultimately poor record keeping have led to conflicts over who owns what. And so there was a big movement to put all this information online, right? Track all the ownership of these plots of land, put them in the cloud, and give them to the communities. But actually, the unintended consequence of this has been that venture capitalists, investors, real estate developers have swooped in, and they've begun buying up these plots of lands right out from under these communities, because they have access to the technologies and the connectivity that makes that possible. So that's the common thread that connects these examples: the unintended consequences of the tools and the technologies that we make. As engineers, as technologists, we sometimes prefer efficiency over efficacy. We think more about doing things than the outcomes of what we are doing. This needs to change. We have a responsibility to think about the outcomes of the technologies we build, especially as they increasingly control the world in which we live. In the late 90s, there's a big push for ethics in the world of investment and banking. I think in 2014, we're long overdue for a similar movement in the area of tech and technology. So I just encourage you, as you're all thinking about the next big thing, as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, as engineers, as makers, that you think about the unintended consequences of the things that you're building, because the real innovation is in finding ways to include everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So before I go on to this slide, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that he touched on. One, that I kicked myself that I did a story on Bitcoin back in like 2000 and Bitcoins were like $3 to $5 and I did not purchase any. Things change in time. Think about what he's talking about in terms of ethics. Do you think about programmers having to consider ethics in their decisions? I was a biology major. In biology, there's a lot of ethical questions. Do we clone humans? Do we program our babies? Do we use fetal tissues for research? All these kinds of things. I have never thought about the ethical considerations of apps, of computer work. It is becoming more and more clear that some of these tools can be used by malefactors and that there are going to be good and bad things that come out of technology. There could be really bad things, like crazy ransomware. Right now, the East Coast, our pipeline is blocked because a company was probably too lazy to have a backup of all their systems. So computing innovations can have unintended consequences. Some of these unintended consequences are positive and some are negative, like the idea that the Colonial Pipeline is able to be managed the whole East Coast from Texas. That's great when things are working well, but that gave the hackers that ability to paralyze that whole thing. While it is impossible to predict every outcome, by thinking critically and bringing multiple perspectives to the table, we can try to better predict the ways our innovations may impact the world. This is going back to diversity in teams. Is it going to be easier for me to figure out how my app is going to impact the world with 10 other people that look and sound like me and went to the same schools? I don't think so. I think we are all going to think the same. When you have people in your team that look differently than you, came from different places, studied different things, you are going to have that multiplicity of experience for them to be able to say, oh, I had a situation where this happened to me and it was a real problem. It may not have happened to you. You need diversity to get perspectives. Okay, here we go. Last one, I think. Post your innovation idea and would your idea of a computing innovation bring a positive or negative change to the school community? You were supposed to be giving us an innovation that would help a school in the last board. Just think about the innovations that were posted. How could those have positive or negative consequences? Again, we'll take 2-3 minutes to do this, all right? So at 2:13, let's see what we come up with. Would your idea of a computing innovation bring a positive or negative change to the school community? You cannot just say both. You've got to let me know an idea of what your innovation was, because both doesn't tell anyone anything. This is my life as a filmmaker. Filmmaker, we always tell you, you've got to include the question in your answer, because otherwise nobody knows what you're saying. How old are you? 7. That does, 7, the number 7 doesn't tell me anything. I'm 7 years old. My last birthday, I was 7. That tells me that you're 7 years old. Okay. Positive, the school GPS, as students would get to class on time and they wouldn't get lost. But what if you were trying to get lost? What if, there was a shooter that was from your school that could track you by the GPS? Maybe that's a problem. Again, I apologize for bringing up that word because I don't like the idea that we are all targets. When I worked in news, I got a little feeling for what your lives are like. It is so strange that as a student, you are a target. It is so strange that as a news person, I was a target. The doors to PBS NewsHour had to be locked. They had always been open until the massacre at the newspaper in Annapolis. Again, it was our president that was encouraging people to think that reporters are the enemy of the people. That is reprehensible. Okay, positive for students who don't like wasting paper. Oh, that was the digitizing one. So positive would cut down on time. Negative would cause students to get lazy and make them not attend school, purposely be absent. That has to be like your check-in app or something. Paper or tool that can copy and paste pencil. The positive is it would be a huge time saver. Positive for people to find a class they may not have known about before. That was Anjali's, the app that uses like AI to see what might you be interested in. Great ideas, all great ideas. Okay. Something that's funny in here that I had in one today, but not in the others. The idea that a computing innovation needs to have a program, okay? This you are probably going to be asked on the AP, so write it down. Computing innovation includes a program as an integral part of its function. That's the definition. So this is not a computer innovation. It is not hardware. In order to make a computing innovation, you have to have a program. Ideally, a new and improved program, okay? It can be physical, like a self-driving car, non-physical, just computing software, like Photoshop, picture editing software, non-physical computing concepts, e-commerce. You know Amazon has a heck of a lot of code in it, all right? Unit 10, Lesson 3, Data Policies and Privacy. How does a computing innovation use the data we give it? Okay. Okay. Here's our prompt. Which of the following pieces of information would you consider to be private or personal, as in you wouldn't want to share it with just anyone? We do not have a board for this. You can just put it in the chat. What of these 18 things do you feel are too personal to want to share? These 18 things are your PII, your personal identifiable information. This is what is stripped out of your internet messaging in order for companies like Google, etc., to use your info and sell it. They do not use your name. They assign you a name, XXY241. The problem is XXY241 has all your behaviors except for your name. So they know exactly what XXY241 wants to buy, when they buy it, where they buy it. Okay, so Andrew says all but number 3. He doesn't mind sharing his favorite musician or band. I think that is a very appropriate. I did not notice number 3 going through these. I got no problem with people knowing my band.
People don't know, but knowing, for example, your parents' full name is enough to get their phone number, their address, and much more.
Oh, sure. No, all you got to do is Google it. You know,
Yeah.
it's the yellow pages. You guys don't know. I mean, there used to be real phone books, like physical ones that were delivered to your house every year. Now it's all online, so you can look it up. Your information is precious, so try and protect it. All right, so here's another fabulous video on privacy.
What's the deal with privacy policies? We've all received a bunch of them lately because of the new GDPR privacy regulation in Europe, but what am I supposed to do with all this? this info? How do I even begin to process this thing? Privacy policies are legal documents that are designed to shield companies from lawsuits. And because of this, most of us probably don't even read these privacy policies. If we're being totally honest, we're also probably going to use these services regardless of what their privacy policies say anyway. But you should try to care about your data because it's not only important to know who you're giving it to in light of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal and major data breaches like Equifax, but also because you might find some interesting tools in these policies that'll give you more control over your information.
Privacy policies do have some value.
That's Joseph Jerome. He is going to help us learn about privacy policies, as is Nate Cardozo, the senior staff attorney at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. So before we get into their hot privacy policy tips, let's first establish who actually has a privacy policy. It's basically every company.
You know, when you're signing up for a loyalty card in your grocery store, that's a huge data collection point.
Your grocery store might not seem like the pinnacle of technological achievement, but if they're collecting your information, they have to let you know some parameters around how they use it. Understanding what's written, though, isn't easy.
Humans write them with the notion to not make them clear and readable, but to make them legally bulletproof.
Joseph suggests looking for the word control to find what data settings you can change. He also looks for bullet points that sum up a policy.
A company can't even give you some high-level highlights of what's going on that suggests that they probably aren't as mature in their privacy thinking.
You can also easily check the date the privacy policy was published or last updated. You'll want to see something relatively recent to show the company takes privacy seriously. Finally, and crucially, Joseph says we'll want to figure out what information is collected about us. He's skeptical of companies that collect location information, even if it's technically stored in the aggregate, meaning that location data isn't directly tied to your account. Basically, he just treats location information as sensitive and doesn't readily share it. Nate searches for the phrase "such as" in the policy, which is actually a bad thing.
If a privacy policy uses the term "such as," that means they're collecting all sorts of stuff, and they're not going to tell you what they're collecting.
Just out of curiosity, let's look at some of these privacy policies and try out these tips. All right, so let's of course start with Instagram's privacy policy. One word that Joseph mentioned is the word "not." The reason you want to search for "not" is because companies typically won't put that in because that means they cannot do something, and that really limits them. This is interesting. It says, "We will not rent or sell your information to third parties outside Instagram." But then it lists a bunch of exceptions, including giving this information to third-party advertising partners, which is not good, and that's probably what you're most interested in. How about trying "such as"? There's a such as, there's 5 such as's here. So here we have a such as. That means we also share certain information such as cookie data. So that means they could be sharing cookie data, but it also leaves it very open. It could be other stuff too. Nate would not be happy. Now, what's interesting about Instagram is they actually have a separate policy called the data policy. We're going to check that out. I'm interested in the controls that Instagram offers, like Joseph mentioned. So I'm searching control, and immediately you can see, learn more about how you can control who can see the things you share. So it brought me to this page on Facebook because Instagram's owned by Facebook, and I can actually go to my privacy settings and change them. And I can actually edit who can see my future posts. Right now it's public, which is not good. We can actually make it to friends. So now only friends will see my future posts. Go back to this data policy. This is interesting. This is facial recognition. So if I click that, it takes me straight to this facial recognition settings page and says, do you want Facebook to be able to recognize you in photos and videos? I'm uncomfortable with that, so I would say no. A lot of people probably don't know that these pages exist. So it's actually a nice feature that Instagram/Facebook calls your attention to these if you know what to search for in the data policy. Again, is any of this going to make me not use Instagram? Probably not, because I like Instagram, but it's good info to have. Plus, maybe vocal users can make a difference in company policies. All right, is there nothing else we can do? What if I really, really hate this policy? Keep in mind, you can always say no to giving a retail store your email or phone number. You can even ask why they need it. You could also set up a burner email account that you only use for spam mail. That at least segments your online identity a little bit. Nate also says we can request our data from companies because after GDPR was enacted, they have to give you your data if you request it. They'll often still give it to you even if you don't live in Europe. So now we're privacy policy professionals, sort of. But honestly, even still, privacy policies are a mess and no one wants to spend forever reading them, except for maybe Joseph and Nate. Now, this is where things get interesting. Joseph believes AI will help us eventually parse through these policies and make sense of them.
I really hope we can get to what I think are standardized machine readable privacy policies. Long term, we really need these policies to be machine readable so they can be digested at scale.
Nate and the EFF, however, aren't proponents of these AI assisted readings. Nate believes that AI would actually be terrible and could easily be gamed. Certain phrases like such as and not would trick the system, which does make sense given that we're just looking for those phrases too. Instead, he thinks the privacy policy itself needs to be solved with more information on data and how it's used. Maybe then, he says, AI would work. For now, we're going to just have to use our brains a little bit and try to understand what these privacy policies are telling us.
When advocates or researchers or even the general public read something in a privacy policy that is alarming to them, that has a way of trickling upward to companies. And a lot of the stories that we read about that are like, what is this company doing? That usually is first revealed through some sort of public statement they made, oftentimes in their privacy policy.
So what he's referring to there is like typically a Facebook that they do something and you're like, oh, look, they're changing their policy. Okay, so key takeaways. Personally identifiable information about an individual that identifies, links, relates, and describes them. Technology enables the collection, use, and exploitation of information about, by, and for individuals, groups, and institutions. Geolocation cookies and browsing history can all be used to create knowledge about an individual. As one student was just saying, knowing your parent's name, knowing your address can let someone, help them to steal your identity. Most digital technology needs some kind of PII to work. For example, street navigation needs to know your location, or PII stored online to simplify making online purchases. Other times, websites collect more data to improve their services. So I describe this in a bunch of ways. One, it's a generational question. For me, my generation, I don't really want to share anything. And it was funny, in my last class, I had the first 4 answers were none of the above, that they didn't want to share any of that personal information, which I found surprising because my, stereotypical response is that Gen X, your generation, is much more at ease with social media, much more at ease with sharing their personal information and things, and not as worried about the consequences of that. Personally, I don't want any profile on the web because people like our last president are going to search my Facebook and say, gee, you said something here that I don't like, and I'm not going to hire you as a result. I don't print it. They don't know. That is like censorship. It is preventing me from speaking because I'm scared that what I say is going to be used against me for retribution. Okay? That's not right. But these are some of those pluses and minuses. One student in the last class said they thought that facial recognition technology in the classroom would help attendance. And I said, I don't really want facial recognition technology in my classroom. I don't want people identifying me by my face. Luckily, with my mask, I don't have to worry about it. Okay, many services and websites collect information like your browser history that can be used to advertise to you by creating detailed profiles of who you are and what you like. They are not taking your name. They are just taking your browsing history, right? Like I say, they're assigning you an artificial name, but that artificial name, don't be confused. It's you. It might as well be your name. It has all your behavior, and they are going to send the advertising not to XXWY. They are going to send it to you. Personally, I really dread the day that I walk by a store and my phone sends me a message that I should go check out their sale. I don't like that prompting. I don't want my phone thinking for me. I don't want it anticipating my needs. I don't like that. But again, this is a very generational and personal preference thing. Okay, search engines can also record and maintain a history of searches made by users. Google gets all your info. Bing gets all your info. DuckDuckGo gets all your info. Recently, there was a big issue where people like phone companies, Verizon, wanted to be able to access all your information. And again, I don't want to be political, but let's say the last administration was excited about sharing all your information with them. Why do you need privacy protection? Okay. This was the idea that right now, when you use a browser, they can take all your information because you are on their private browser. The phone company sees everything you do, all your traffic, whether you're on Yahoo, Google Chrome, whatever. But they were saying we should be able to harvest all that information too. I don't like that, and it did not pass, thank goodness. Once data is made digital, and especially once it's shared online, it is much harder to control. That is another thing, not so much just for your generation, but it's the idea. Think twice before you post crazy comments or things. Your future employer is going to Google you. PII can be used to steal the identity of a person or stalk them online. Information which is often posted on social media can be combined to create a profile on you. Somebody was saying just knowing your parents' full name, knowing your full name. An example, in Washington, D.C., my driver's license used to be my social security number. My driver's license number was my social security number. They changed that about 20 years ago. Everyone I gave my license to could just write down my social security number. Nobody cared because nobody had a use for a social security number. They couldn't use computers to access it. Now, that's a problem. Okay, we are done. We have 1 minute left. Hang on. Yeah, getting someone's IP address. So IP address, social security number, fingerprint. Andrew says he'll keep all but 3. Okay, any questions, problems? Anybody have a problem with their app? As far as I can tell, I am down to 1 person with a problem with their app for the final AP. Ideally, everyone has access to their AP digital portfolio. Please put all your materials up there. I will check them in there. Remember, you need to submit to get it in the portfolio. When you hit the submit final, that is going to the AP. Class is over. We have had a successful day. Remember to stay safe out there. Try and think about that link being bad before you click it.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Great day. I don't know why. I enjoy that class. It has you thinking a lot. Okay, team. Great to see you. Au revoir. Anybody?